Well, good afternoon, all, and welcome to Day at 5500, and the first of what will hopefully be a number of module responses from me over this video format. Great start to the course, by the way. Really appreciated the assignments that you've handed in, and we'll begin with assignments right off the top. I already sent you an email. Don't do two formal answers for each one of those modules. Pick one of those questions and do a really great job with it. That's plenty. I don't know why I ended up with that two, but we don't have to continue on there anyway. Pick one and do a great job with it. Remember that I want you to do two things with that. I want you to drop it inside the forum so that your colleagues can respond to it, and I also want you to drop it into the assignment section so I can respond to it and give you a little bit of feedback. Make sure you do it into both spots, please. So, what do we have here? We begin, of course, on professional development, and right off the top, I say we hopefully get around to changing the name to professional learning. We took a look at the inherent difference between what can be construed as teacher professional development, something I think as Timberley would kind of refer to it as something that's being done to teacher professional learning, which is led by teacher and done for, so that the for being student learning, the driver, student learning, the driver of the PPCSLs, the driver of our competencies is a recognition that the prime mandate of educational leadership is ensuring that everything to do inside of that school is centered on a premise that all children can learn, all children need to be given the opportunity to learn, and that all children with the right set of characteristics internal to the school will learn. They may learn different things, they may learn at different rates, but they're going to learn. That's what we have to keep in the back of our mind as leaders. I guess we could even say that would be belief. As leaders, we actually have to believe that. But it's so often not very much easier said than done. And really, what does student learning for all look like? What does this sense that all children can learn, albeit at different rates, actually mean? And which parts of that do we really buy? And if we expand that out a little bit to our colleagues, and we say, what do our fellow teachers actually believe about that? So often it shows up with the whole debate over authentic assessment. And I know when I led it internal to my high school, and then when I led it again in a kindergarten to grade 8 school in Toronto, I guarantee you, I had some teachers who did not believe authentic assessment was the way to go with children. That the way to go with children was to give them a mark on something, and they'll learn from that. And yet we know from John Hattie that the most important thing we can do with students is provide ample amounts of feedback. That's where we're going to push them forward. It's a different understanding of what is actually connected to this idea of assessment. I know, and I probably did bore you with my spiel last summer, and I'll do that again right now. And that is, assessment. What is it? Well, it really entails two things. As professionals, it is our responsibility to know what our students know so we can actually help them know more. And know in this sense is the very holistic sense of the word. It also means do, also means process skills, attitudes. The KSAs blended in. Our job as teachers to know that about every one of our children, so that by what we do in interaction with them, they will know more. They'll start from where they're at and continue to grow from there. Well, we need to know that. That's first key ingredient with the whole assessment piece. Second piece, of course, as you well know, is we have a legal mandate to report. Report to parents, report to school authorities, report to the province. That's built in. That's a legal mandate. It's non-negotiable. But report what? Well, we report what we truly know our students to know in relationship to the program of studies. In some cases, some children's program of studies is their IPP or IEP, whichever terminology you use. It's the sense being that we have to report what our children know based upon the program which collectively we've devised with and for them. So what does that have to do with belief? Well, it has a lot to do with belief in the sense of, what do our teachers believe? If they don't really believe that is the case, boy, we're going to be faced with quite an interesting debacle as we try to move towards more and more of a authentic assessment approach. We also have a battle when the really tricky issues arise in the newly developed policies. I had a teacher the other day that, I don't know where we were driving, a friend of mine, we taught together for many years at Catholic Central, and raised a question almost, it was a yeah but. The yeah but question was, yeah but, the kid is caught cold cheating on some assignment. The kid deserves a 0. Well, that cuts to the heart of really belief statements. And that's really when we start to see beliefs driving action and action implementing school policy. And of course, my answer was no, still doesn't. We have to deal with that in a plethora of ways. But the one way is we can't denigrate our professionalism in any way, and simply and easily and without much thought simply give that student a 0, because it violates our essential professionalism and violates those two big principles on which authentic assessment rests. Doesn't tell us what the student knows. Doesn't tell us what the student can do. And therefore we have no right to pass that on to anybody else, that the student knows nothing. What we do know is the student cheated. What we do know is that the student violated our code of conduct. What we do know is the student is not living up to his or her responsibilities as a student within the province of Alberta under the confines of the School Act or under the moral imperative of what schools are all about. That's what we do know. And that has to be dealt with and addressed. But not with a 0. So, when it comes to this area of professional development, professional learning, school improvement plans, starts very much with this idea of knowing our colleagues, what they know, and what they believe. And from there, we can start to look outwards into where growth is going to occur. Of course, to looking outward is incumbent upon vision and a necessity. We know competency number 2, vision, developing one and articulating it within the school community. And vision in this sense doesn't necessarily mean the wonderful little statements that hang on school walls called vision statements, although it could be that. It comes down into, and if we use, for example, this idea of assessment and moving towards an authentic assessment school, or in the cases that many of you folks wrote about, the role that inspiring education is going to play. The role that the high school flexibility project is going to play in high school redesign. It starts with big ideas like that. If we're going to move in those directions, then we have to understand what our teachers believe. We have to understand what we believe. And then we move forward into, and what does the vision look like? Well, if we're going to build a better mousetrap, if we're going to redesign existing practices and procedures that we already have in place inside of our schools, if we're going to rethink the way in which we deliver education and work in partnerships with children as they learn, if we're going to rethink how we put a high school together and move away from the old Carnegie unit, what is that going to look like? What is that going to look like? Well, if we simply come up with in isolation our wonderful answer to whatever that might be in our office or me up here in my ivory tower, very little change is going to invoke from that. Might get a lot of compliance, but you're not necessarily going to get a lot of engagement. The process becomes so key to the end result. And that's another one of the things that I really liked reading in your forum responses. In reading in the forum responses, I could see that process played a huge role in most of the projects that you talked about so far to date. And part of the process was inherent in building the vision. You didn't use that language. And matter of fact, I'm rare to ever see the word vision in any of these projects that you talked about. But it was there in living, breathing color. And the vision and the plan was, if collectively, collaboratively, through whatever process you follow, we were able to come up with a set of principles or a path or a plan that we could follow with our school, and it was done in that collaborative fashion, then there was greater likelihood of it being successful because people could buy into this idea that, ooh, you know, maybe we have struck upon the better way to build the mousetrap. That ties us in a little bit to what David Townsend and Pamela Adams are talking about in their first couple of chapters. The essential equations necessary for school improvement. And in this case, they're setting the context for us. And they're very clear about this idea of the separation of change and improvement. Lucy Miller, ex-now superintendent of Calgary Catholic, came into that very large school district from Ontario, where she had been an equally highly successful school superintendent. But she really struck her stride with Calgary Catholic. And part of it was, when she came in, was her recognition of quickly finding out the lay of the land within Calgary Catholic. Very quickly finding out about the greatness that was always inherent within that school district. Very quickly finding out about the people and their commitments and their beliefs about education, kids, the district, the city, the province, the world. And from there, worked in a hugely collaborative fashion to develop the better way to build a mousetrap for Calgary Catholic, and built upon the premise of the possibility of improving. Worked through a system of vision, clearly established goals, articulated the goals and the vision in such a way that people bought into them because they came from them. It was done in such a collaborative fashion that the goals and the vision established by the district with this new leadership of Lucy Miller came from the people. Was it Lucy driven? I strongly suspect it was. But driven in such a way that people simply bought into it because it came from them. Remarkable endeavor for that to ever happen. But yet I see that throughout the plans and processes that you've been talking about within your forums. You go back and take a look at that again and reassess it from that paradigm. How much group buy-in drove these plans? And the process that it took to get it to the point of the group buy-in, and the collaborative process that were used in order to develop them, a little bit different in all of the schools, or at least from what I could read, but yet some essential characteristics that were very much the same. Also built upon, we'll go back to those two big words again, change, improvement. Nothing will make the eyes of a staff glaze over quicker than the principal talking about, we're going to change. If the Minister of Education uses the word change in any speech, he almost automatically loses the audience, or at least gets them to rise in rebellion, perhaps. Well, we use the word improve, modify, take a look at becoming even better. You get a different reaction. And I think that's what David and Pamela are trying to say in the first chapters of their text. It's about improvement. It's not about whole-scale change. Teachers go to work every day expecting to do a good job. We all go to work every day expecting to do a better job, to do a good job, to influence children, to cause children to know a little bit more today than perhaps they knew yesterday. We don't ever get up and go, oh, I think I'm going to be a crappy teacher today. Oh, I think I'm going to go to school and really mess up. We may do a crappy job. We may mess up. But we don't go to school intentionally doing that. We go to school because we truly believe that through our actions, we can make a difference in the lives of others. Now, that's one of my beliefs. And that's a belief statement that I just gave you. And I fundamentally believe that to my core. That my colleagues that I've worked with now in 32 years of teaching go to school to do a great job. Well, if we've always been doing a great job, why do we have to change? And that's where the word becomes a problematic. We go to school having done great jobs with groups of students that we've worked with. Then we start to recognize the world, school, children, change. Now we can use the word. And as a result of that, we have to take a look at our own practice and what we do that we continue to grow at to accommodate what's happening with children, life, new knowledge, research, and move forward as an educational institution. Because all that the institution is the collective of all the people who work there. So if we adopt the idea of improvement, getting better at what we do, we may already be fine, or we might be pretty crappy, or we might be great. Whichever one of those fit, well, good. But we become a little bit better tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So, inherent in your plans, that's what I read. That was the recognition of doing the groundwork that was necessary to bring the teachers into that context of whatever this plan or process or improvement might be, so that we continue to grow in that area. The process that you follow, they were fascinating to read, and I enjoyed it, and thank you very much for them. So we have vision leading to goals. And I caught within there a bit of almost like an internal conflict happening. And in a number of the posts that talked about the role of TPGPs, talked about the connection of TPGPs to school goals, and then provincial goals, and school division goals, I guess, in between there, and how they start to wrap together. Well, there is a conflict going on right now, as you well know, because you live and breathe in schools, of just how tightly should those multiple layers of goals all do this. I don't have any magic answer for that, but I know this much, though. It's the connecting of those various points that the power of moving forward collectively grows. The older version of doing TPGPs, in which is really where, midpoint, I guess it would be, of my career came in, because I think it could be almost as much as 15 years ago. We've had this mandate at every teacher in the province shall develop a teacher professional growth plan. And I remember bringing in speakers speaking on the topic, and they would talk about the importance of writing as one of your goals going to get a regular massage, because your own wellness was hugely important, and it should go into a professional growth plan. Well, we know today that that's nonsense. That's not what we do with teacher professional growth plans. Hugely important for teachers to continue to pertain and look after their own wellness, as it is for all of us, without question. It just doesn't belong to teacher professional growth plans. Focus on how we move the organization and us as individuals forward pertains and belongs a great deal inside the teacher professional growth plans. So they tie to the goals of the organization. If the goals of the organization are simply imposed from outside, and the goals internal to a school never give us that opportunity to talk, collaborate, build, and collectively seek that better way to build that mousetrap, then it all takes on a very much of an artificial flavor. And that's what Townsend and Adams are really telling us. If we build into that process the idea of the cohesion, the collaboration, the group development, the idea of pulling this together collectively, and then we start to attend to things like individual teacher professional growth plans, then it starts to make sense. And the resistance factor disappears, because then we're dealing with our own beliefs and our own belief within where we fit. So, with that, we now have the beginnings of the way forward. We're getting a sense of where those school improvement plans go, and we're getting a sense of what's driving this new sense of what teacher professional learning is all about. Not necessarily as opposed to the professional development, but to some degree how it can also blend with a more traditional sense of professional development. So let's jump to the end. At the end of all of this, you're going to write a school-based, I'll say it yet, you're going to develop a school-based professional development plan. There's a few things that are just naturally implied in that. One of the things is you're doing this as an academic exercise. You're doing it for a course at university. So you can write into it that it's hugely important to bring groups of teachers together and some planning cycles that you would do and all that kind of stuff. Wonderful. You don't actually have to do any of that. Not for this. If you really want to develop a high-powered professional development plan for your school when you are a school leader, then yes, you will. But not just for the confines of this course. You can write it in as if it all happens. It doesn't necessarily have to happen. I hope that's making sense. You know, you do it in theory. I want to see if you're catching the big ideas coming through both the work of Timberley as well as the work of Townsend Adams. And then blending it together into a coherent plan for your staff that you would follow if you were the principal and you really wanted to take that on. That's the end. And then as you're reading through each of these chapters, as you're writing your responses, as you're responding to the forums, keep on thinking about that. How should that form what I put together of the process of what I'm going to do when I have to write a professional development plan? Knowing full well that if you really did that in a school, you would have multiple writers. You'd have multiple people belonging. You would have multiple thought process occurring. You'd have multiple times in which you're trying to ascertain what is it that we truly believe about our children in this school at this time, and what is it going to take for us to move them forward in alignment with our school division goals and with the provincial goals. That all starts to come together. And I think that'll work out okay. So, in a few minutes after I finish making this tape and post it up to YouTube, and I'll send you an email as well to let you know our current forum leaders. Some of you have really taken to heart the idea of responding to your colleagues. Some of you still have to do that, and I expect it to be done, folks. That's the power of this learning. I know you're busy, busy people, but if we want to get the most out of a course that's going to emphasize the importance of collaboration, understanding each other's belief systems, understanding where our students are at, understanding where our colleagues are at, in order that we can collectively develop a plan that we can move forward for the benefit of student learning, then we have to start practicing that here and sharing with each other some key ideas. So respond to those forums. I'm just quickly looking over my notes. I think I covered off most of the things that I have. Oh, yeah, no, that's good. Close enough. I'll address an issue of data, I think, in the next one. I'll try and do a little one of these to see if we can pull some of these ideas together, kind of talks at the end of each of these module cycles, and we'll see where they take us. Okay, it's good for today. Great stuff so far, folks. We're right on track. You're doing what I want you to do. Remember, you only have to respond to one of those questions. If you respond to a couple, blend them together into one forum post. Cut the word limit down a little bit. You don't have to go as in much detail of trying to explain what it is that the author just said in that chapter or chapters. We've all read them. We all know. Get to the big ideas and then building that context piece. And the context piece is what should be the driver and developing your own way forward. With that, I'll stop there. Enjoy. Bye now.